Okay. Today, my guest is Professor Salvador Carmona. I'll keep my introduction short to maximize our time with him. In the next 30 minutes or so, we'll talk about Salvador as a person. Professor Carmona is a thought leader and an esteemed scholar, and finally, as a mentor to many PhD students and junior faculty. For the sake of time, I'll skip many of his accomplishments and give you a very quick snapshot. Salvador Carmona is the rector of the IE University and professor and dean at the business school in Madrid, Spain. He was named 2023 AIB International Educator of the Year Award. Rector Carmona is recognized internationally both as an academic and a manager of educational institutions. Over the course of his career as an academic manager, in addition to his responsibilities at the IE University, he has overseen the national R&D plan in Spain in the area of economics and business management. He is a member of the editorial boards of 15 prestigious international academic journals. He has been the editor of the European Accounting Review, president of the European Accounting Association, and senior editor of Oxford Research Reviews, and is the author or co-author of a long list of articles, books, and teaching materials on international scope. Thank you, Salvador, for joining us.
Thank you, Arikan. Thank you very much to you for your kind introduction. Thank you.
Salvador, what did you want to become when you were a child?
I wanted to study business administration because I had a long tradition in my family of people doing business administration studies. My mom was, studied business administration, and also, uncle and, many cousins, they did the business administration. So it was part of the family tradition, and I wanted to do business administration myself. If I can be a little bit more specific, the tradition was a little bit more on the accounting side. Mm-hmm. And this is what I did, finally, yeah.
And what was the earliest moment of recognition or awareness between domestic versus foreign for you?
The main thing for me, talking about the domestic versus the international foreign, that had to do with the fact that Spain, when I was doing my university studies, was very much a very isolated country, and there was a main tendency to move forward in the sense of becoming more international, and this is something that we learned. People of my age, we learned, and we tried to become as international as we could. And that was not easy because just to give you an example, I mean a funny example. For example, in Spain, it was very difficult to get an international passport, if you had not done the military service. For people not to go away, okay, and not doing the military service and and staying in a foreign country, okay. But that was not easy, okay. But it was my intention, yeah.
Huh. And how did you decide to get into international business or international accounting topics? What was the natural progress? Is it a natural progression or?
Well, I mean, it was something that I have to say it was on my mind all the time. But most importantly is because the mentors that I had at the University of Seville at that time, they were very humble people, and they were very knowledgeable people. Of course, I mean, they were very much focused on Spain and the Spanish regulation and so forth, but they were very wise people. And they were trying to convey to us as junior scholars the idea that the only thing that we knew, as Socrates would say, is that we were knowledgeable about our own ignorance. And that was the main thing. And then, knowing about that, that meant that for us, it was very important to develop the intellectual curiosity. And in Spain, that was something that it was not easy to develop. In accounting particularly, that was very much focused on accounting standards. So if you wanted to do something different from accounting standards or normative accounting, I mean, you had to go international.
What was the progression from being an academic, pure academic, writing papers, doing presentations to the management of academic side.
Well, I can tell you a little bit something funny with respect to this. I mean, and that was how I published my first international paper. I mean, this is going to take a little bit of time, but I think it's it's something which is illustrative of how was the situation in Spain at that time. My wife is also a professor a university professor. She's a professor of management, and she did her doctoral dissertation on fuzzy set theory. So we decided to prepare a paper on the fuzzy set theory and financial ratio analysis. So we prepared a paper, and we wrote this paper in English. We presented this paper in a conference in the United States. And then, after presenting the paper, there was not a single question. And then, our knowledge was so bad that we decided that we had persuaded everybody because there was no questions at all. So when we got back to Spain, what we did was to translate the paper into Spanish and submit the paper for publication to a Spanish journal, that was a practitioner journal. I think it was the only paper that they rejected, in the entire life of the journal. So what we did was to translate the paper back into English. And then, one day we found, a journal that looked quite interesting. It was, it was very well, the bundles were very interesting and very well made. And then we submitted the paper to that journal for publication consideration. So we received the referees' comments, and we did not expect any kind of comments from the referees. Actually, we felt really, really very bad for these comments because, the comments were really, bad, for our understanding at that time. So we decided not to resubmit the paper. Okay, but one day we had a colleague, one of these wise colleagues that I mentioned to you before, mentor, at home. And then we showed him, how is possible that people be, so ugly, with a referee like this. And then he said, so we are not going to resubmit the paper. And then he said, are you crazy? The paper is nearly there. Why don't you, resubmit the paper? And you will see how the paper is going to be accepted. So we did the revision, we resubmitted the paper, and the paper was accepted. But the thing is that, at that time in Spain, the Spanish Ministry of Education was implementing the research assessment exercise like the one that is being implemented in the UK at that time, something like that. So we were granted, both of us, we were granted, the research assessment exercise because it's pass or fail. So we passed. And then because of this, we received an offer from Carlos III University, Charles III University, which is, it was a brand new university, very international, was going to be very international, and that changed our life. So you can see how, lucky we were in the sense that, we presented the paper, if the paper had been accepted in the Spanish Practitioner Journal, I mean, probably we wouldn't be so international as we are right now. But, life changed because of this kind of lucky coincidence.
Interesting. Something that is not on your CV that people might find interesting about you as a person.
Well, I think that I like music very much, and I like nearly all kind of music. For example, I like classic music, and conductors like, for example, Food Bengla is one of my favorite, conductors. I also like very much Brazilian music. The old bossa nova with Vinicius, Toquinho, Antonio Carlos Jobim, John Gilberto, Maria Creusa, and the new, not so old people, Jorge Aragao, Seca Pagodinho, Beth Carvalho, and also, I like, flamenco, which is the Spanish music, and I like particularly something that perhaps, for international people can be interesting, and these are the flamenco versions of some well-known songs, like for example, Can't Take My Eyes Off You. There is a version by Alba Molina, which is an outstanding one, or Melanie Safka. She's from New York, but she has a wonderful flamenco version of I Will Survive, that I recommend to everybody. And also Ketama is, performing a wonderful version of a Brazilian song, which is Flor de Lis, just to give you a sense of this. So music is one of my favorite things. Yes.
Do you play anything yourself?
No. I don't play and I don't sing. I can tell you, my mother was one of the most generous persons in the world. I remember that it was, in the, mass services, when I was a little child, and I was singing there. And then, a lady that was sitting beside me told me that I was singing really very well. So I went home, and I told my mom that that lady had told me that I was singing really very well. And my mom, who was a very generous person, told me, Salva, never trust that lady. Okay, so what I did was not to sing again. Okay.
If you could do it all over again, what would be the second best career path for you?
Well, second best career for me most likely would be as a member of the a civil servant doing tax tax inspector. This is something that I would have wished to do really very much. Yes.
Okay. Regrets in life? Anything you wish you would have done or done differently?
Well, I think I feel really very fortunate for the kind of life that I have had. I would have wished, just keeping, some friends that pass away, keeping them with me here alive, because it was a very much learning opportunity for me. That is actually the only thing. But other than that, I mean, I'm very, very fortunate with my family, also with my professional life. And I think that I receive much more than what I deserve. Yes.
What are you most proud of?
Well, I am particularly proud of my friends. Okay, so I think that I have really very good friends. That as the famous song of that is being sung in Liverpool soccer stadium. Okay, they are people that will never me to work alone, and so I am very proud of them.
Let's talk about some research in general terms. Let's say you're stranded on the road. People are curious about you in this pub that you're seeking shelter in. How do you explain your research to people who don't read accounting journals or business journals in general, and why your research is important?
Well, I think that one, in terms of intellectual curiosity, one thing that appealed to me since I was a little, young scholar, was the extent to which the institutional conditions of settings that are not very well, addressed in international publications, can help to the theorization of accounting and management. And I think this is, in my view, I think this is the case with the Spanish setting, Latin American setting as well, that I try to address as well, where the institutional conditions are significantly different from those that are usually published in international journals, and can help not just to make a contribution in terms of new settings, but can help to make a contribution in terms of, contributing to the theorization of accounting and management. Yes.
And when we talk about research going forward, in your opinion, what are the underdeveloped, underutilized, understudied areas in IB? Well,
I can tell you about IB from the standpoint of an accounting scholar.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
And with respect to this, I have a paper I have to mention. Okay, it's a draft with 3 co-authors, Gilad Livne, Igor Filatov, and Jan Fish. That this paper is an introduction to a special issue on accounting and international business. And in the introductory piece, I mean, we identify with respect to accounting two main areas, okay, in accounting. One of them has to do with the convergence of management accounting practices. The convergence of management accounting practices is something which is an important debate in management accounting research. And the thing is that right now, this is under research with respect to what happens in terms of the convergence of international management accounting practices in the international arena. In the case of emerging economies, for example, we don't know very well, what is the role of technology in the convergence of management accounting practices. And also, the increasing role of markets, like, for example, the roles of services, like, for example, the case of Amazon. This is something which is, really very, very, under research in management accounting research, with respect to the convergence of management accounting practices. Also, right now, for example, the impact of macro crisis, like, for example, the COVID-19 or the Ukraine war that is creating, very significant problems on the supply chain, is something that is under research in management accounting. Yes.
Okay.
Just to refer to management accounting.
About interdisciplinary research, obviously, you have some thoughts on how to do interdisciplinary research, how to borrow from different disciplines. What's your take on the progress of international accounting research on borrowing from other disciplines, sister disciplines, economics, finance, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's doing really very well. Of course, we still have to make some more progress. no question about this. For example, everything related to international accounting standards is something that is investigation. Research is very well developed. About which are the main drivers of accounting standardization across different countries. But this is something that applies to financial accounting and not so much to management accounting. Something that perhaps creates new avenues for further research. This has to do with environmental accounting, in my view. So environmental accounting right now is strongly focused on disclosure, okay? And this very much has to do with what I mentioned before about international standardization. But further research, for example, on social accounting, further research on sustainability, on governance, on the supply chain, for example, how multinational companies are conforming to environmental practices in their headquarters, but they are not so much, or maybe they are so much interested in implementing environmental, sustainable practices in across the supply chain is something that can be extremely helpful. Also, with respect to environmental accounting, focusing on non-listed firms is something that will be really very interesting. And getting back to management accounting, in terms of environmental accounting, I think that the development of metrics to measure, the sustainable practices in a very precise manner is something that can still benefit from further research.
In your not opinion, actually, what do you observe? Do emerging market firms view these international standards more suitable for them, or is it developed markets that use them to their advantage? Or
in developed markets, this is something which is very much implemented. This is not. I don't think this is an issue. The main areas would be for non-listed firms, if they are operating in the developed or underdeveloped countries, and also in underdeveloped countries or emerging economies. This will be the key, in my view. Yes.
And when you talked about environmental accounting, you're talking about carbon footprint count?
Carbon footprint, for example. Yeah, this is key. Yeah, this is a key issue. I think that there is a regulation on that, and in terms of disclosure, this is something which is being done. And I think, companies are, implementing this in a very reliable way. But as I said, I mean, there are issues, with respect to how to move, beyond disclosure, beyond the disclosure which is being, implemented from the United Nations regulation or from international accounting standards. Yes, I think this would be the specifics. Yes.
How does one get non-listed firms to publicly disclose information?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, for non-listed firms, there is no such pressure, okay, to disclose this kind of information. What I can say is that I think this is a mistake, okay, on the part of non-listed firms. For example, in a paper that was published, several years ago in Organizational Studies by, with two co-authors, we tested one of the main principles of population ecology, and that had to do with the extent to which, accountability is something that can help organizational survival. Okay, so when the firms are providing voluntary disclosures of their internal practices, at the end of the day, okay, they can have, higher survival prospects than their counterparts that are not doing that. And I think this is something that that is very important, not only, in the, with respect to just, survival, but in the sense that if you are accountable with respect to this, at the end of the day, you are implementing, really very good practices in your firm. And at the end of the day, this will have a very good effect, a very good impact on, the performance of your firm and the recognition by the market and the, and external stakeholders.
And this data is from Spanish firms?
Yeah, we did that with Spanish firms. I mean, that research, that was with the Spanish newspapers. We used the whole population of Spanish newspapers during the period 1966 to 1992. Okay, the reason why we stopped in 1992, it was because there was another regulation that, created multimedia, conglomerates. Okay, and we were not talking about individual newspapers. And then one thing that we did was to split the observation period from 1966 to 1977. This is during the Franco dictatorship, and then during the democracy. So interestingly, during the Franco dictatorship, there was no any kind of relationship between accountability and survival. But during the democracy, there was a very strong relationship between accountability and survival.
Of course, beautiful. All right. From your window, thinking about the IB scholarship and its evolution over time, what can you say about the evolution of the field in general, with respect to accounting also, from where we were to where we're headed to? Is this a fruitful evolution? Are we forgetting something along the way?
Yeah, well, I think the evolution is very positive. I have to say. I mean, I conducted some research, several years ago, trying to see, the extent to which, Anglophone scholars, were quoting, papers published, okay, by non-Anglophone scholars, okay, in international journals. The thing is that the cross-referencing was extremely low. So I think that was published, many years ago, and I think that situation has changed. So I think that the willingness to become more international on both parts, on the side of non-Anglophone scholars, to become more international, to publish in international journals, I think is higher and higher. As for example, is the case in the case of the Spanish academics, okay, but in many other jurisdictions. And at the same time, I think that the willingness from scholars established in Anglophone countries, where the main journals are established, to consider publications that are making a contribution to the theory, no matter whether they are based on Anglophone settings or non-Anglophone settings, I think is also higher and higher. So I think this is, the trend is a very positive trend, and I have to thank, the editors of these major journals for, for being so open with respect to this. And I think, we have to also to try to promote, this kind of research in settings, in tiny space intersections that are not, heavily published in international journals. For example, I can tell you that, when I served as editor of the European Accounting Review, one of the activities that we performed was to launch a workshop on writing to publish, and then that workshop on writing to publish was, held in Prague, and was targeting, Eastern European countries and Eastern European scholars, so that they could feel, which was the support of, the international community for them to publish in international journals.
Thank you. Salvador, when you first started, when we first started this conversation, you mentioned you had mentors in Seville, and you learned a lot from them. What was the one or two memorable quotes that you can remember? What was the advice that they gave you for a successful career?
I didn't hear you well. Can you?
What was the what was the best advice you received so far from your mentors?
Well, the best, thank you very much. Sorry, the best advice, that I ever received, and I can tell you, helped me a lot to start an academic career, was, in the academia, you are your own boss. So all what you study, all what you learn is for yourself. Okay, so the more you do, okay, the better for yourself. You become, someone that is going to grow in terms of intellectual curiosity. This is one, and the other one is that what I mentioned to you before. It's also very much illustrated in a book that I am reading right now by a colleague of mine here at I University, Santiago Iñiguez. The book is on philosophy, and he says that management is philosophy in action, and he's quoting Socrates when he's saying, the only thing that I know is that I know my own ignorance. So the more that you do in terms of, cultivating your ignorance is the way in which you can become, a better scholar, and somebody who is going to be humble, and humility is going to drive all your activities.
And I want to talk about your award, the International Educator of the Year award. It's a huge accomplishment, obviously. Congratulations once again. How did you do that? How does one get the International Educator of the Year award?
Well, I can tell you that I didn't know about this. It came to me as a surprise. I already know that somebody proposed me to the committee. I'm not going to disclose the name of this person. Sure. But it came to me as a surprise, and I can tell you that I feel really honored and humble for this, because I did not expect that, and I feel really overwhelmed by this recognition.
Sure, I understand. Salvador, so what's your philosophy for teaching, for educating masses? Also, as a manager of universities, educational institutions, what's the philosophy?
Yeah, well, our philosophy, the philosophy also, has to do with what I mentioned to you before in terms of humility and modesty. This is something that we try to instill in our students as much as we can, because, the thing is that, the way that somebody can recognize its own limitations is what is going to lead to self-improvement at the end of the day. So we try to instill this in our students. The student body at I University is very international. Just to give you a sense of this, this year, the intake that we had in September 2022, 76% of the students were international. I'm talking about bachelor degree students. For example, in our master degree program, 92% of the students are international, but this is another level. For all of them, that they have different culture where they can learn from the instructors. But at the end of the day, what they can learn is from their, classmates, and they can learn a lot of things from their classmates. And this is going to make their experience, really enjoyable, and it's going to position them, in a very competitive way in the job market. In addition to that, one thing that we try that is going to be horizontal to everybody is the sense of modesty and humility. And now, with respect to the contents, one thing that we try to do is to have something that we call the IE University module. And then the IE University module is something that all students have to take, disregarding what's going to be their bachelor degree program or their master degree program. So in the IE University module, we have ethics, because we think that there is no compromise between business and ethics. So you can perform really very high on both sides of the coin. Entrepreneurship, this is something which is very much in our DNA. This is not only taught to students that are going to launch their own business, but we try to instill creative thinking in all of them, no matter whether they are going to work as civil servants. And then, sustainability. This is critical to us. For example, our university is carbon zero in terms of emissions since 2020. And this is something that we try to convey to our students. So modesty and humility, and the IE module is something that is going to be transversal for all our students, no matter the degree.
Perfect, thank you. Salvador, last question. What's a question that I should have asked you but haven't?
Well, the only, perhaps I don't know. The only question is why I have been wasting, so to speak, my time doing historical research, research in accounting history, and I think that this is something that I have done because of the intellectual curiosity that I mentioned to you before, because I think that the time-space intersection that happens, when we go back in history is can be really very good in terms of making contributions to extant knowledge. For example, just to give you an example, I conducted research with some co-authors on the Royal Tobacco Factory of Seville. The Royal Tobacco Factory of Seville was one of the largest companies in the 18th century in the world. It had more than 1,500 employees. It was located in Seville, and they had a supply chain that was really very complex, because they had to bring tobacco from Latin America. And then the thing is that the received wisdom in accounting research is that the earliest cost accounting systems were implemented in the British industrial for companies in the British Industrial Revolution as a way to improve efficiency. And then, we found a company that was operating under strict monopolistic conditions, okay, and the cost system was as sophisticated as the cost systems of those companies in the British Industrial Revolution. Why that happened? If this was a monopolistic company? Well, what we found is that they tried to, they did that to avoid smuggling, because tobacco was really very expensive at that time. Okay, so it was a way of controlling the smuggling, and at the same time, it was a way of controlling operations at a distance. So cost accounting systems were helping a lot, to control operations at a distance. And these were the two main reasons why that happened. And in a sense, this is something that complements, okay, the view of competitive companies in the British Industrial Revolution implementing early cost management accounting systems.
Salvador, thank you for your time. I enjoyed it a lot. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience will agree with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you, Arikam. Thank you very much for your time.